Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our PowerBrew, Can I Bring My Dog to Work Today? Using Total Rewards to Attract and Retain 5 generations of workers. My name is Libby Trossel, and I am the Senior Director of Workforce Training and Business Services at Carroll Community College. And with me today is Sonia Hand, who is...
Good morning, everybody.
Thank you, Sonia, who is our co-moderator today. And so I'm going to take a minute to talk to you briefly about business training and services, since we are the sponsors of the PowerBrews. For those of you that are not familiar, business training and services is an arm of Carroll Community College, if you will, who is dedicated to working with local businesses to help them be successful and meet their strategic goals. And we do that through our training and organizational development consulting services. So you can see on your screen there's a plethora of services we provide. Don't expect you to digest this morning, but I would invite you to please visit our website at www.carrolltraining.com to learn more about what business training and services can do for your organization.
So this is Sonia. Good morning, everybody. I hope you all have your cup of coffee in front of you. This is going to be an exciting morning with Julie Develin. Just for those of you who haven't been on one of our PowerBrews before or a webinar, I just want you to take a moment to familiarize yourself with the webinar workspace here. You'll see the control panel on the right side of your screen. The little red arrow, you see a purple box up there on the screen I'm showing you. That little red arrow will collapse or expand your webinar panel. And throughout the session, we encourage you to submit questions. So you can submit questions if you look there in your control panel. There's a section called Questions. If you click the plus next to it, it opens up. Please feel free to type any questions in there as we go on. And as we get an opportunity, Libby and I will speak for you all and ask those questions of Julie. If we have any questions that we don't get to through the webinar today, then we will be sure to put them either at the Q&A at the end of the session, or else we'll follow up through email. Julie can follow up through an email after the session.
And Sonia, I just want to mention today that Julie is joining us remotely, so that if our audience can bear while we transition over to her in a little bit, just in case we have a pause in the presentation for that, just want everyone to know that Julie has not graced us with her presence here today, but she is joining us remotely from her work site.
Thanks, Libby. So Julie Develin is with us today, and we're, again, very excited to have her. She's the Vice President of Human Resources at Target Community, and she began her human resources career in Hanover, Maryland. She's been an adjunct instructor at McDaniel. She's worked with the college a lot. She's the co-coordinator of the Human Resource Development Program actually at McDaniel. And she's recently started teaching HR for public and nonprofit organizations in the Human Services Management Program. She was a charter member and helped with the creation of Carroll County SHRM. She's been very active in SHRM, and we know her from that as well. She's originally from the Philadelphia area, but she is joining us today. I know she's very active in the Carroll County area, and we're very excited to have her.
Very happy to be here. Hi, everybody.
All right, go ahead. If you'll ahead, I think you've got the controls at this point.
All right, I've got the controls. Let's see.
She's driving.
Yeah. All right, there we go. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Libby and Sonia, for a very kind introduction, and thank you also to Carroll Community College for the opportunity to present this PowerBrew today. What a great resource the college provides with these PowerBrews, free resources. It's great for the business community. So starting out throughout the presentation, as you might have seen at the beginning, there are some polls for you to participate in, so I hope you find them interesting enough that you'll actually participate. it looks like we have on the webinar today about 60% millennials, 27% Gen Xers, and we even have some traditionalists too. And we'll talk about what those things mean moving forward. We also have 7% Generation Z, which is interesting as well. So really happy to have everybody here today, and I really appreciate you coming out this morning. So if you understood the little play on words in the last poll title, you might be a fan of The Who. And if you're wondering just who The Who are, you're probably of a younger generation. When I said talking about my generation, that's a song by The Who. So this is my first webinar. I'm going to be honest. I'm used to speaking in front of people and getting to see a reaction to the jokes that I make, which I'm sure are usually hilarious, right? No. So if it's okay with you, I'll just imagine you looking at your computer and being enthralled with this presentation I'm about to give. So about this title, Can I Bring My Dog to Work Today? Using total rewards to attract and retain 5 generations of workers. I gave the presentation this title because it's catchy and also because it's a reality today, and we'll talk more about that later. Even though I am a cat person, I know dogs are popular. So, all right, hopefully you all have your coffee and you're ready to dive into the objectives of this presentation with me. So in the short amount of time that we have together today, we're going to talk about a lot of material, all the while hopefully leaving time for questions at the end. We'll talk about what a generation is and also about the characteristics and some workplace habits of each. We'll define total rewards, and I'll also discuss some strategies companies can use to attract and retain employees using these elements. I'm also going to touch on some management tips as well. And finishing up, we'll look at a few future trends and then hopefully have some time for questions, like I said. And if there are additional questions that we don't get to, you can, of course, email me. So I'm also going to give you some information on future trends and current research because I think where we've been is important, but where we are now is reality. So why this topic? This topic has been one that's interested me for many years, and I've been teaching graduate school since 2009, and this is a subject that I've always devoted class time to because I believe it's some of the most important insight out there as to what makes our workplaces thrive and survive today. So whether you're in HR, if you're a manager, or if you're even in a non-supervisory role, I really believe that you can have a harmonious and productive workplace. You can't have one, excuse me, unless you know your people. And this requires more than knowing names and faces, as we will learn moving forward. The other thing is that much of the traits of the generations of people you will hear about today can apply not only to the workplace, but in our everyday lives as well. So I mean, if you think about it, you're not just a member of your generation at work, you're a member of your generation in life, and there are many parallels to be drawn there. So I hope after the presentation you might gain some insight into the thoughts and behaviors, not only of those you work with, but those all around you outside the workplace too. I know we have a mix of decision makers here, managers, employees, and other, different type of positions that you all are in. So while some of the strategies that I will describe today deal with companies and how they can strategically use different generations to their advantage, I really do believe there are going to be takeaways for everyone. You might have an aha moment or two during some of the things I'm going to say when you think about someone in your life, maybe who's in your family, or even somebody you work with or a friend. Okay, so why do they act that way, or why could behavior, how could it be explained through a generational perspective? So let's start out at the beginning here and define what makes a generation. So simply put, a generation is defined by a set of shared formative experiences through a period of time. And these shared experiences include, but they're certainly not limited to, news, events, education, parenting styles, communication techniques, and technology. So the generations typically span 15 to 20 years or so in terms of time. So these shared experiences make up a collective mindset of people, and the working theory is that collectively those shared events and experiences shape their views of work, their workplace, and their outlook on people and experiences around them, both in and outside of the workplace. But for our purposes, of course, we're focusing on the workplace and workplace effectiveness. So before I go on, it's important to mention that we don't all fit into the mold or fit into the box of generational traits that I'm going to describe. Just because the traits and characteristics attributed to a certain generation are attributed to a certain generation doesn't mean that you're going to fit with those traits, even though you're a part of that generation. These generational generalizations are made basically through looking at a group of people through a somewhat judgmental lens. So again, don't think that just because you were born at a certain time, you have to identify with all of the characteristics of that group of people. What you'll identify with for sure, though, is that you definitely have these shared experiences with others in your generation if you live through those years. You might also find yourself, my audio connection, okay, audio connection restored. You might also find yourself identifying with traits of another generation. So in the world today and in workplaces today, there are 5 generations of people. And you might have looked online and you might have seen that there are some places that only have, say there's 4 groups of 4 generations in the world today. But truthfully, there are now 5, and that is just because there's a new generation of folks who have just entered the workplace. So let's talk about the 5 generations in the workplace today, and we'll start out with the traditionalists. Traditionalists born generally between 1927 and 1945, and today they're in their 70s or older. The baby boomers, born between 1946 and 1964, and they're generally 51 to 69 years old today. Generation X, 1965 to 1980. They're generally 35 to 50 years old today. The Millennials, they were born in 1981 and 1995, and today they're generally 21 to 34 years old. And Generation Z, our newest generation. These are the folks that were born after 1996. So yeah, people that were born in 1996 are now in the workplace. So if you find that hard to believe like I do and you feel really old, you're not alone. You know, I was at a get-together with some friends, and a friend of mine and I, who were in the same generation, we were discussing how things were when we were kids, and we were talking to a 6-year-old. And her mind was blown when we told her that there was a time where we actually had to get up to change the channel on the TV, and that if we wanted to watch a movie, we actually had to go to the store to pick one out and then return it. And if we were late doing that, we would get fined. You might remember the phrase, be kind, rewind. For those listening who don't know what I'm talking about, congrats on being as young as you are. But it's amazing when we think about our life experiences and to chat about those life experiences with the younger generation, because it really gives valuable insight into how far the world has come, both socially and technologically. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So let's briefly look at the 5 generations in the workplace and discuss what makes them tick as a group of people. You might notice I'm going to focus a little more heavily on a few groups in particular, and that's basically because I believe they're more relevant to your workplaces today. These are the people that you're working alongside with, the people that make up the majority of the workplaces. So there's certainly a plethora of information out there about generations in the workplace. But again, what we're concerned with today is the aspect of attracting and retaining employees based on what they're looking for at a certain point in their lives. So what are the things that, where are the things, places that employers, where can they be smarter and more accommodating? What are the ways management styles and workplaces can adapt to the changing generational demographics? These are not questions that can be explored completely in the short amount of time that we have together today, but there are some larger points that we can discuss. And with that said, all of these employees are working side by side today. So what possibly could go wrong? We like to think, though, more in terms of what could go right. I like that question better. So let's start out with the traditionalists, and these are also known as the silent generation and the greatest generation. And you'll notice with the generations, there are different ways to characterize them in terms of naming them. So Tom Brokaw, who was a journalist, wrote a best-selling book about them, and he dubbed them the greatest generation. And this is due to their perseverance during World War II, being a testament to their character. And you can see a picture that I have there of Tom Brokaw's book. I'm not getting any money for advertising that, just letting you all know. So they're called the silent generation too because as children they worked hard and they basically just kept quiet. These folks grew up in some dark times during the Great Depression and also during World War II, and they knew war. They knew the Korean War, the Cold War, communist Russia. So because of that too, they're extremely patriotic, and most of them either fought in a war or they were children of those who did. While they're generally over 70, many of them are still in the workplace today due to changing economic conditions. And they're an asset to the workplace because these folks will be some of your hardest workers. They view work as a privilege, and they have a strong focus and sense of loyalty. They often wonder what happened to loyalty in others, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. And they also wonder why people don't talk to each other anymore. They miss the personal interaction and interpersonal communication with others. And they're most likely to not be looking at their cell phone when you're sitting with them at the dinner table, and that's even if they have a cell phone. So like I said, they make up a small but important part of the workplace, and this is also due to their knowledge, their dedication, their perseverance, and their focus. Respect is very important to this group of people, and they expect their managers to treat them this way because they'll get in return. They also respect hierarchical systems in the workplace, and you might also know this group to have great handwriting too, something that is a lost art form these days with all the typing that we do. This group also dresses well. They respect America, and they were raised in a time when rules were rules and you follow them, and that's how they act in the workplace, and that's how they expect their coworkers to act too. So they're formal folks, and they like to definitely keep their personal and business lives separate. I've been doing a lot of talking here, so I just want to check with the moderators. Libby, before I continue, are there any questions? I just want to make sure that we're okay.
Well, since you opened it up, I do have a question. Can you give us an example of a traditionalist, maybe somebody that everybody would know, so I can put a face to this?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone, at least I hope everyone knows some of these famous traditionalists. Clint Eastwood would be a famous traditionalist. Barbara Walters, Harrison Ford, Ray Charles is a famous traditionalist. And probably the most lovable traditionalist that I think all of us know, Betty White. She is a traditionalist, but she's transcended generations. So hopefully that helps you, put a little bit of a face to the traits of these traditionalists.
Thanks.
Sure. All right. So let's continue. Next up, we have the baby boomers, and we're talking here about one of the most influential generations in history. We have Vietnam, the women's rights movement, the civil rights movement, the man on the moon, Woodstock, the assassination of JFK, the assassination of Robert Kennedy, the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. All of these events helped shape this generation. So you might say, why are they called baby boomers? Well, this generation got their name due to the huge increase in babies being born when men returned home from World War II. So in the workplace, these folks have a strong work ethic, and they also have extreme loyalty to their employer. They're optimistic achievers who are dedicated and skeptical. Those are a few words used to describe this generation. And they were once forecast to be retiring in droves, but because of the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009, that's changed. They have reshaped the workforce as we know it today by simply remaining in it and arguably suppressing opportunities for future generations to advance in workplaces, which of course can cause some tension. Some argue that these folks can't retire because they're sandwiched between two generations that need their financial support. So they have their elderly parents who perhaps need their financial assistance, and then they have adult children who may not have a job. So that is one reason, or a couple reasons why they may still be in the workplace, but some simply want to work because they enjoy it and their work gives them purpose. So in your workplaces, you might find that this group is the first group to resist any type of change because they have difficulty adjusting to it, and they certainly aren't afraid of questioning authority. You might have also seen that too. They live to work, and they will work long hours, and we'll go more into that later on. But on a personal note, my dad is part of this generation, and he retired several years ago, but he got bored, and he went on to do something that he found that he absolutely loves, and that is being a bartender. Okay, so in generations like the baby boomers, even if they do retire, a lot of times they go back into the workplace due to not feeling like they have that sense of purpose anymore. Just so you can give some faces to names. I'm sorry, faces to this generation. Some famous baby boomers are Bill Clinton, Oprah Winfrey, Madonna, Tom Cruise, and Bill Gates. So that's just an example of some of the famous baby boomers. Moving on. There we go. Yeah, moving on. We have Generation X, and you might have heard Generation X a lot about them in the news. And on a large level, this generation dealt with a lot of turmoil and uncertainty, and their experiences, their shared experiences include the AIDS epidemic, Watergate, Chernobyl, and also the fall of the Berlin Wall. The Clinton-Lewinsky scandal has been part of shaping this generation too. So these are the kids that hung out in malls, they played video games, and they were also the first generation to have computers on their desks. So traditionalists, they had computers, but they were virtually the size of rooms. The baby boomers also had computers, but they were the size of slightly smaller rooms. And now the Gen Xers, they now have computers right at their fingertips. You might recall the Apple IIe computer, one of the most popular desktops of the time. I know I had one and used to play Where in the World with Carmen Sandiego, and I loved it. So this was definitely the start of the technological revolution during this generation. And on the home front, this generation experienced triple the divorce rates of ones before it. And what this did was it resulted in these children having to learn to live very independently from a young age. And because of that, they're dubbed the latchkey kids, which is basically a child who returns home from school to an empty house because both of their parents were working. Because of this, they're independent, resilient, and flexible in the workplace. They saw the birth of the internet, and they're good with technology, but they're skeptical of authority. You might recall this as the grunge culture, a time where you had MTV and Green Day and Nirvana fans. Gen Xers in the workplace generally care about advancement less about advancement and more about life balance. And they also expect to affect the terms and conditions of their job. So again, we'll talk more about that moving forward too. But some famous Gen Xers we have, Sandra Bullock, Keanu Reeves, Peyton Manning, and Eddie Murphy. So now we have the Millennials. This generation is definitely in the news a lot. And they're also called Generation Y, the Echo Boomers, and Generation Next. So you might hear those terms thrown around. They all mean the same thing. Millennials make up the largest number of workers in the workplace today, numbering some 80 million in force. And according to some studies, you know, they do represent nearly half the workforce, and that number is growing. Their shared experiences are definitely grim. 9/11 is a big generational shared event that shaped a lot. They experienced Columbine, Enron, and also Hurricane Katrina. And for them, the web opened up a world of possibilities. Many of these kids grew up children of divorce, and they're used to having blended families. They're also sometimes called digital natives, having grown up with technology at their fingertips. And because of this technology, you know, the technology has had a marked effect on how they interact with others, and we've probably seen this in our workplaces. This generation wants things done immediately, and they have little patience. They're also very highly educated and informed due to having that technology at their fingertips. They're a very diverse generation, and they've actually redefined diversity at work, making it more of the norm and not the exception. Unlike the generation that came before them, they grew up with very close parental supervision. And you might have heard this term before too. All of them got trophies. No matter where they finished in a race or in a sporting event, they all got trophies, and 10th place ribbons were definitely not uncommon. So as not to hurt anyone's feelings. So this has led to a sense of entitlement for this group like never before. And you know, they had their childhoods were the first childhoods to be scheduled. They were part of teams from the age of 3 years old, sports teams. And because of this, at work, they're actually good team players, and they're very optimistic. So if you've ever thought, though, that millennials seem selfish, it's because they were told it's okay to be selfish. And they value, in the workplace, managers who coach them, who are positive, who are motivational, who are collaborative, and who also take an educational approach, all the while taking time to understand their personal goals and also their professional goals. And I'm sure you'll recognize some of these famous millennials who I'm about to mention. Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber, Kim Kardashian, Tim Tebow, and the Facebook founder, Mark Zuckerberg. Those are all famous millennials. And moving on to Generation Z. There we go, Generation Z. So this is the newest generation, and this generation is also dubbed the iGen, or the Centennials. There are other names for it, but Generation Z has pretty much stuck. And these folks are around 18, 19, or 20 years old, and if you can imagine it, they're even more technologically plugged in than the millennials. If you check out the picture that I put on this slide, this is the reality now. You know, from birth, they're digitally plugged in, and many of them spend virtually all of their waking hours plugged in and online. So this will also greatly affect how they communicate. They're the first generation to know how to read or write to use a computer. They've never known a world without widespread terrorism and war. So because of this, they're a very realistic and very serious group. They certainly don't need things sugar-coated for them in the workplace. It's also been said that this generation, Generation Z, shares some traits with the traditionalist generation. And if you think about it, you can see why. They grew up in uncertain times, just like the traditionalists, so they share that same kind of fear and skepticism. Most of what we do know about Generation Z is that we don't know about Generation Z because we won't fully know their impact on the workplace for several years down the line. More on them later, but I'm going to now, I think we might have a poll coming up. We'll take a few seconds.
So you all may have noticed, I just noticed that we've got a typo in our poll, so just excuse that. Baby booms and baby boomers.
No one notices.
Until now.
Until now, yeah.
Have to be honest.
Yeah, you know what? Honesty is the best policy.
All right.
All right.
That's interesting. We've got an equal, we have about 43% Gen X, 43% of the respondents responded with Gen X, 43% responded with Millennials, and 13% with baby boomers.
Yeah, and I'm glad about that because those are generally the groups that I'm going to focus mostly on for the rest of this presentation. So I'm not surprised also to see those results. So thank you all for voting in that. All right. Not sure why the slide won't advance there. There we go. Okay. So moving on, I want to look at these generations and talk about them in terms of total rewards in the workplace. And now that they're identified, how can we use total rewards to attract and retain them? So we all know that recruiting today is difficult, and especially in an economy where their jobs are prosperous. So just what are total rewards and what can they do for us in a multi-generational workplace? Well, simply put, total rewards are all the investments, both monetary and non-monetary, that an employer makes in its workforce. And elements of total rewards include compensation, benefits, work-life effectiveness, performance management, recognition, and talent development. And you don't have to be at the top of an organization or even in HR to have an impact on the total rewards package that your company offers. If you're part of the culture of a company, you have an impact on the total rewards package simply, by influencing that culture, be that positively or negatively. So I want to quickly show you an example of a total rewards model. There we go. And this here is an example of a total rewards model from an organization called World at Work. And World at Work is a nonprofit HR organization, and it focuses on strategies used to attract and retain an engaged and productive workforce. There are many other total rewards models out there, but from other organizations like Willis Towers Watson, for example, they have total rewards models. But this is the one that I consult most, and it looks complicated, but it really isn't. if you look at the model and you start at the top where it says external influences, you can see it says economic, labor market, cultural norms, and regulatory. And those external influences go into influencing the business strategy, the organizational culture, which go into influencing the HR strategy, which then goes into influencing the total reward strategy. So you can see it just goes down. Compensation, benefits, etc. All those things make up the package. And then the idea is that if all of those things are aligned, then your workforce will be productive, and you'll be able to attract, motivate, retain, and engage your employees. And therefore, the organization will benefit, and the employee will benefit as well.
Actually, Julie, this is Sonia. We've got a question.
Okay.
And that total rewards model may be more familiar, not so much the look of the model, but the concept may be more familiar to some of our younger viewers and or younger participants. But we have a question about how long has the total rewards model been in existence, or perhaps has it been popular in the workplace?
I can't give you an exact number of years that it's been in existence, but I can tell you I've always subscribed to this total reward strategy from World at Work. And since 2009, they have revised this total rewards model at least 4 times based upon the changing workforce. So the elements of the compensation, benefits, etc., the elements that go into total rewards, those have always been a part of workplaces. To be completely honest with you, I'd have to look to see how long World at Work has been in existence, but I know that it's been several years.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I want to talk about the different generations in terms of the elements of total rewards. And in the interest of time, I'm only going to focus on really 4, but really 3 generations: the Traditionalists, Baby Boomers, Gen X, and Millennials. And again, we don't leave out Generation Z, but there's not a lot of research yet on what makes Generation Z tick in the workplace. So when it comes to compensation, we have various needs over the generations, and according to an article on SHRM.org, employee pay preferences matter a lot when it comes to an effective rewards program. And it's important for employers to think about tailoring them to meet employees' needs to attract and retain top talent. So something to think about too, a lot of the rewards programs and compensation programs in HR today were created by baby boomers for baby boomers. And this isn't necessarily the reality of how how things should go today, based upon the newer generations and their wants and needs. Basically, the total rewards programs of tomorrow, what they're going to focus on is employee choice. Personalization, customization, etc. Those are becoming words that are used to draw in younger generations to companies. So when it comes to compensation, we have the traditionalists who might just be looking to supplement their Social Security income, but what they're looking for mostly also is stability. So they value a good retirement plan, and they plan to retire in the foreseeable future, at least they hope. So compensation plans that are predictable and very, not risky, they work for them. Baby boomers, so they have a view that they may not ever be able to retire, or that they'll work beyond their retirement age because they need the money. In addition, they're using their money to pay for aging parents, or again for their adult children who may be living at home. But they also lost a lot of money in the in the recession in 08 and 09. So they could be in the workplace too to try and recoup some of those funds. So for them, looking at a robust retirement plan or pension plan, that could be an attractive motivator to get them to your workplace. Gen Xers, so they're realistic with money, but they're skeptics at heart, and they don't think they'll see a dime from Social Security. for them, in lots of studies, it shows that pay is ranked at the top of their list as most important. And in addition to that, millennials are the same way. Pay is also ranked as a top motivator for them. But a lot of them are entering the workplace under this crushing debt from college tuition. And the cost of living is up, and they're paying more into Social Security than income taxes. And they don't expect to see a dime from those contributions either. So what they're interested in is the here and the now. So while baby boomers might be more interested in wanting to be paid through a combination of salary and long-term savings and retirement options, millennials generally, they tend to prefer to receive immediate compensation for their work. So one way companies can shape their compensation plan for all generations is to recognize who's in your workplace or department and who will be entering and who will be leaving. It's important to make sure that you as an employer are checking salary surveys often and making sure that your compensation plan is aligned with what's current in your industry and your geographic area. So, with social media, people talk, and the last thing you want is your company to be known as a company that lags behind. Sites like Glassdoor.com, Salary.com have changed the landscape and basically blown the cover off of data that was once very private. You can also offer for your employees compensation planning. It's often inexpensive or even free. I know there are several financial advisors who would love to come to your workplace to talk to your employees and give them advice. So moving on, we'll talk about the benefits portion of total rewards. So with the passage of Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, more people are covered than ever before. People can no longer be denied coverage for pre-existing conditions. Women can no longer be charged more than men for insurance. So those are all good things. In addition, we know that children, even married children, they can now be on their parents' health plans until the age of 26. So if you think about, these are millennials who are on their parents' health plans, and this is what they've expected and what they've received their whole lives. Their parents continue to take care of them into adulthood, just like they took care of them when they were children. So when looking at these generational differences further, when you have traditionalists, many of them are covered by Medicare, and they're looking for benefits to possibly supplement what they already have. So they value a strong medical plan because they know that they'll need to use the benefits. And it's the same for baby boomers. Baby boomers oftentimes make employment decisions based upon the benefits, the health benefits that a company offers. They're even sometimes willing to take a lower salary for better benefits because they recognize the cost involved with medical care, and they recognize they're not going down, and they're going to need to use their benefits as they get older. Gen Xers, they want the freedom to choose. If you think about it, the power to choose is everywhere, so why can't that power also be in the workplace? Millennials, according to some, they're actually transforming how employee benefits are offered, due to how millennials were raised in an era of protection. They know they need insurance, and they know the costs involved with it, and they generally have a positive attitude towards it, although they're less likely to use it. But they're glad it's there if they need it. So companies need to make sure that their benefits plans suit their workforce, and the way that they do that, the way that you do this is, again, you look at your people. Who works for you? Are they mostly men? Are they mostly women? What is the average age of your staff? Have you asked your employees what they like and what they don't like about the plan that you have? If you just ask, you might be surprised as to what you find. And also, as a manager, it's important for you to talk to the HR department, talk to the higher ups, talk to the decision makers about things that you're hearing from your employees. Because a lot of times that information does not get filtered up to where it needs to go. So it's important for managers to speak up as well.
Julia, we have another question.
All right.
Noticing you're talking a lot about how these traits, and it's very helpful in terms of these various forms, compensation, healthcare, et cetera. I guess some of us may be noticing that some of these traits seem to be sort of affixed to these various generations, and some seem to be more transitional. For instance, you talk about Gen Xers being more independent, and you were just talking about them wanting freedom in their healthcare to be able to choose what works best for them. But then you were also speaking about millennials and how they're into the here and now in terms of compensation, and traditionalists, of course, when it comes to healthcare, they have Medicare. So those types of things are more transitional based on their age, less so than necessarily than their generation. So I guess that's essentially the question is, is this something that you need to continue to keep track of? Because, as millennials get older, they'll be at different stages in their life. So although some certain traits of that generation may stay affixed, some the characteristics in terms of compensation may change.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to continue to stay aware of the changes as these generations get older, because it is true, the younger millennials have different needs than the older millennials, and those younger millennials may evolve into having needs that are much different than the current older millennials. So, there's a lot of research out there, and, a lot of the research remains current. So it's important for employers to definitely make sure that you be aware of that, and also to continue to talk to your people and find out what it is they're looking for.
Got it. Great advice. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Okay, so I'm going to move a little quicker here just because of the interest of time. So for performance and recognition, we're going to look at those two things together just in the interest of time. Traditionalists, what they value are traditional types of rewards, like plaques and watches and the things that you would traditionally think that companies would hand out for years of service and that kind of thing. Baby boomers, they want recognition and they like status symbols, and personal rewards are important to them. Money is a big motivator for this group and also motivating to them, and sometimes we don't think of this as a reward, but job titles, vice president job titles or high up director job titles, those are important to boomers. And if you give them an award, they're going to display it on their wall. Gen Xers, they think the best rewards are tied to performance, and they want feedback on their work. So with them, some results-based incentives will work well, and they also like to be rewarded with time off. And millennials, they crave constant feedback. This is because they receive constant feedback as children. The more feedback that you give them, the better their performance could be. Not just financial incentives, spot bonuses are good, gift cards, and like I said, not just financial incentives like group outings and that kind of thing could also work for millennials. They like to be in groups. So think of the feedback you're giving your employees as supervisors and ask yourself, is it working? Have you asked them? Are you being fair? Are you being flexible? And are you being equitable? Do you see morale improve after you give the recognition that you give? It's also important to remember that simple thank yous are good. Also handwritten notes. Think about the last time you received a handwritten note. In this day and age, handwritten notes are very personal. So again, it's in the interest of time moving forward, work-life effectiveness, this one is probably one of the most important things in terms of the elements of the total rewards model. And it's one of the most written about pieces. So traditionalists value a flexible work schedule in terms of the number of hours worked each week. They may want part-time hours, as they may want to spend time with their grandchildren, or they may want to pursue other activities. Baby boomers also crave more flexible working arrangements today, but in the past they were hesitant to take time off due to being afraid to lose their place on the corporate team. So you have to remember, again, they may be taking care of elderly parents or children, so they may need some time off. They may need that flexibility. Gen Xers, this group mandates flexible working arrangements, and if they don't get them, they often leave organizations. They don't tend to worry about losing their place in companies by taking time off, because what they did was they saw their parents sacrifice time with their family for work, and they aren't willing to do that because they saw the results of that in negative terms. Millennials, they value balance. They will only occasionally sacrifice balance in their lives for a job. So they value their lifestyle over upward mobility. And sometimes, even if presented with an opportunity for a promotion, if it's going to affect their lifestyle, they may not take it. So what this boils down to is that only companies that allow autonomy, flexibility, and appeal to the desire of these newer generations in terms of flexibility are going to get ahead. Offering a good mix of freedom and mobility is vital. And it's even interesting, these days, telecommuting isn't even seen as a perk. It's seen as a necessity, and it's seen as a norm in many organizations. And it can also be used as a cost-cutting measure. You know, when people are at your office, they're using your electricity. They're using your utilities. So, you know, all that costs money, and companies do see results on their bottom lines. So as managers, think of your people and their job duties. Are there ways that their jobs can be done remotely? Are there ways that you know, you can give your people the option to work the way that they wish? Are there ways that you can give your people the option to work when they want to work? The views of the 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 clock punching workplace are very antiquated. They're getting more antiquated as time goes on. And having this mentality will set companies back with millennials, with Gen Xers, etc. So, you know, do your people work better in the morning? Do your people work better in the evening? Why not give them a choice if you're able to do so? And of course, there are some jobs where that is not possible. But for others, you know, you have to ask yourself, why is it that you can't allow your employees to work these flexible work schedules? And just quickly, talent development. Talent development and career development isn't a real option for traditionalists due to where they are in their careers. However, they can be a great help in passing knowledge on to employees. Baby boomers are focused on moving up based on their seniority, not always on their skill and expertise. Gen Xers, they want career development, and you know, they have more degrees and they crave more knowledge and experience both in and out of the organization. Millennials see learning through requests for more experience and more opportunities. And if they don't get it where they work, they will seek those opportunities elsewhere. So I spoke about those 4 generations, and what about Generation Z? Well, I'm going to look at them really quickly, just collectively, in terms of the total rewards. So Gen Z might place more value on work experience rather than education due to the rising cost of education that they see. They're going to be even more reliant on technology than the millennials, and they also place value on social responsibility. The other thing too is they're a healthier generation. They know that you know, sugar is bad for you, and they're going to influence the way health benefits are given during you know, the next 20 years or so, in terms of hopefully being a healthier group of people. And how can total rewards help with attracting and retaining talent? So just kind of you know, in summary, it's about the culture. It's about culture, communication, and relations. So every generation thinks that they had it worse than the one that comes before them, and they think that kids have to, quote unquote, pay their dues like they did. So this is a mentality that needs to change. If you think of the culture in your company or department, can you honestly say that everyone values each other's differences? Are you judgmental? Are you flexible? Are you fair? A culture is not created overnight, it's something that evolves and changes over time. So you definitely want to take a look at that. It's also about a solid and effective communication strategy. Ineffective communication, that's often a barrier to trust. Okay, so what good are your benefits or your incentives if no one reads them, sees them, or hears about them? So you need to look at your workforce and look at your demographics and find the best way to relay the message. And all of these generations have different preferred communication styles. The traditionalists might prefer face-to-face. Boomers and millennials might prefer, emails. They might prefer meetings, etc. So definitely something to keep in mind. Not a one-size-fits-all approach anymore. Definitely, again, you have to look at your workforce. You have to study your workforce and know your people. And just because what one company does, might work for them, it may not work for your company too. And there are some similarities between these generations that I think we also need to remember. Even though there are many different traits, there are a lot of things that are the same. Everyone wants respect. Everyone wants to be valued. Everyone wants to be rewarded for their contributions. So that's definitely something to consider and to remember, that even though we have many differences, we're also alike in many ways. I think just in the interest of time, I'm going to skip the future trends and let's let you know that if you go back in the PowerPoint, there's actually links to these studies. So you can take a look after the presentation if you choose to see what the future trends are. But I can tell you that it's moving more in the direction of technology, 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 as you probably can imagine. Also, workplace flexibility, that's going to be absolutely vital. Let's see. All right. Oops. Okay. So just in summary, you need to know who it is that you're working with. Know your generations in the workplace. Know what motivates them. It's better to be proactive rather than reactive when it comes to the wants and needs of your people and your workplace. It's important also to stay educated on workforce trends and best practices in your industry. You definitely need to talk to your employees and ask them what they want. I can't stress this enough. Just knowing what it is that makes them tick is important. And workplaces need to be flexible and creative, and remember that one size definitely does not fit all. And going back to the title of this presentation, if you think of the companies Google, Kimpton, Amazon, Etsy, Ben & Jerry's, Mars, GoDaddy, Zynga, all of them have something in common, and they all allow employees to bring their dogs to work. And studies have shown that stress is reduced and the work environment is happier in that case. There are also other companies that have innovative and interesting elements of total rewards. They offer laundry services, house cleaning services, half days on Fridays, even things like casual dress. Those are all rewards that employees really value and appreciate. So I think we're almost out of time.
Thank you so much, Julie. If any questions that we have that are left over, as you see, Julie put some resources and references. These are those links she was talking about. But any questions that we have left over, we can get back to you via email. We really appreciate your time helping us to overcome the challenge of the 5 different generations in the workplace, which of course is also it's a great thing as well as it is a challenge. It's a strength as well as a challenge, and getting to understand the motivations of these 5 different generations and how that affects the way that we work together on a daily basis, as well as the way that we should be rewarding in the workplace. Next month, our PowerBrew is Keeping Customers for Life by Allison Kelly, so that'll be a great PowerBrew as well. And we look forward to hearing from you all next month. Please join us. If you can go on and find out more information at www.carrolltraining.com, and if you do a /PowerBrew, that will bring you specifically to our PowerBrew page where you can go ahead and sign up for next month's PowerBrew. Thank you again, Julie.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Everybody have a great day.
You too.